Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SGS Food Safety Certification 101 webinar. We are so happy that you're joining us here today. This is something that we're very excited to deliver because this is a major question, of course, that so many companies have is, how do I get certified? Why should I get certified? And we're very happy to take you through this process today. I am going to start by doing some brief introductions. So today we are joined by myself. My name is Sabrina Baldini. I'm the Regional Sales Manager for Business Assurance in SGS Canada. So I manage the Northeast of all food safety business. I have been with SGS for a couple of months now, but I have, as you can see in my bio, about 10 years worth of food safety experience. Joining us from Food and Beverage Ontario is Jason Crawford. I'm going to let you read his bio, but we're excited that he is here with us today. He brings a wealth of knowledge in the food safety industry. And of course, Jennifer Lott is joining us, who will be leading this webinar. Jennifer Lott is our Technical Development Director for Food and Food Safety in North America for SGS. We are so excited that she's here with us delivering this, because she is our resident expert in the topic. I'm just going to briefly go over SGS. We've been around for quite some time, since 1876. 1878. We are the industry leaders in food safety certification and many other industries in auditing and certification and testing. We have around 99,000 employees all across the world, with 2,600 offices and labs in 11 global industries. We have been around for quite some time and have a massive network. So this is our portfolio. In addition to offering food safety certification and audits, we're also in so many different kinds of industries. So I'll let you have a look at this. So we provide assessments and auditing and certification in addition to training, which is a big piece of the certification food safety picture. So we provide training, we provide consulting services, as the journey is very unique and very nuanced in order to get certified. So it differs depending on every company. So we're happy to provide consulting services. We also have a strong presence in medical devices and sustainability assurance, and also supply chain assurance. So we have quite the wealth of knowledge and quite the network as well. So this again is just kind of showing what our expertise are. We are involved not only in quality assurance, and not only do we offer industry expertise, but we also have digital innovations as well that can help you to manage your audits once you do move forward. We are constantly innovating different kinds of technologies to make it easier and more efficient for you to manage your audits as well. We have a global network of industry experts, and we're also involved very heavily in corporate sustainability as well. So this is the agenda for our webinar today. I'm going to pass it off to our technical expert, our lead, Jennifer Lott, who's going to take you through this and lead us on this journey throughout this webinar. Thanks so much, Jennifer. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sabrina. Jason, did you have a few words you wanted to say first?
Oh, thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, for those who don't know me, my name is Jason Crawford. I'm with Food and Beverage Ontario, and I'm the Director of Membership and Industry Relations. I've been with FBO since 2015. I want to thank SGS for putting on this webinar. We get a lot of questions from processors who are looking for certification, and so SGS had offered to do this webinar for us, which we hope to be able to post on our site as well for people for future reference. But again, thank you to Jennifer and Sabrina for this, because we think it's incredibly valuable for those looking for certification. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jason. So in the agenda, we are going to talk about a brief introduction. We're going to talk about food safety history, the role of GFSI, what Codex Alimentarius actually is and what it means to food safety certification, some of the steps to certification, and then we'll go through some Q&A that we'll do in our chat box. So when we think about certification, all the words on this document I have showing right here on this slide, it's not to take us all back to high school or middle school when we had to learn about history of events that led us to where we are today. But more importantly, this is to demonstrate to you that in the US and Canada, food safety has been around for quite a while. In the US, from 1862, when the formation of the USDA and FDA, through 2011 with the signing of the law of the Food Safety and Modernization Act. Canada's first food guide, the Official Food Rules, was introduced to the public in 1942, and the primary goal of this Official Food Rules were to prevent nutritional deficiencies and improve health of Canadians. It provided guidance on making healthy food choices during challenging times. So we think back to the 1940s, that was during the World Wars. The precursor to CFIA, or the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, was a set of regulations and control measures designed to address biological hazards in meat products. These measures focused on ensuring that food safety and preventing contamination by Escherichia coli 017-H7 NM in raw beef products. These regulations aim to enhance food safety and prevent the E. coli contamination, laying the groundwork for establishing CFIA. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency was formed in April 1997 to strengthen food safety oversight for Canadians. CFIA integrated and expanded their regulatory efforts and included those regulations that were previously put in place to prevent E. coli contamination in meats. So while these precursor measures were foundational, their effectiveness really depended on the implementation, monitoring, and continuous improvement. CFIA's subsequent role in food safety regulations build upon that foundation, and it emphasizes prevention, risk assessment, and collaboration, as well as continuous improvement. A series of food safety crises and impending changes to public laws in the food sector prompted the creation of GFSI, the Global Food Safety Initiative. This was established collaboratively by leading food safety experts from retailers, manufacturers, and service providers in February of 2000. The initiation's aim is to continually improve food safety management systems and ensure confidence in delivering safe food to consumers worldwide. GFSI provides a platform for collaboration among experts from various sectors associated with the food supply chain, including international organizations, academia, and government. Key activities include defining minimum requirements for food safety certification programs, robust benchmarking processes, capacity building programs for small businesses, and focusing on food safety auditor competence. There's a program that's been in the works now for the last few years called Race to the Top, and how we make sure that those that are providing food safety certification audits are really the cream of the crop. The food safety world that I live in as a food safety auditor and technical development director, it is filled with what I like to call the alphabet soup of acronyms. We toss around these acronyms like everybody understands what we're talking about and what our language is. To give you a little context, in North America and Canada and the US, we primarily work with 3 CPOs, or certification program owners. These CPOs are SQF, which is Safe Quality Foods, BRCGS, which is Brand Reputation and Compliance Global Standards, and FSSC 22000, which stands for Food Safety System Certification. The CPOs constantly monitor and update their food safety standards to remain current and address emerging food safety concerns. FSSC 22000 just began auditing to their new version, version 6, this month in April. SQF is in the initial phases of rewriting their standard from version 9 to version 10. And BRCGS, they're considering rewriting their food standard in 2025. So they're constantly evaluating and updating. All GFSI benchmark standards are international. Therefore, these standards do not require country-specific regulations per se. There is no GFSI benchmark standard that requires a company to meet US FSMA regulations. However, they all require that your company meets all applicable regulations in the country of manufacture and the country of shipment. So if you produce food to be consumed in the US, you must meet US regulations as well as CFIA regulations. However, the one thing that all GFSI benchmark standards have in common is the requirement of risk assessment, or HACCP, which is based on Codex Alimentarius. Codex Alimentarius General Principles of Food Safety was adopted in 1969 and has gone through several revisions. The 2022 revision introduced a new annex which focused on determining critical control points for HACCP. Codex is the food code and is a comprehensive collection of standards, guidelines, and codes of practice. Codex serves as a vital reference for international food safety and quality standards. It addresses a wide range of topics related to food safety and quality. Codex is essential because it provides food safety assurance. It is a scientifically based approach with independent scientific advice from the Food and Agricultural Organization, the World Health Organization, and has backing from the World Trade Organization. In addition to the principles on food hygiene, Codex also has standards in other areas that include animal feed, biotechnology, nutrition and labeling, and pesticides, just to name a few. When we say GMP, HACCP in this presentation and in the certification world, we mean Codex Alimentarius, General Principles for Food Safety. So they're almost synonymous. When we talk about GMP HACCP, we mean Codex. To break down Codex from the 30 plus pages of regulation or standard, it's essential to step back and think about your food safety management system as like building a house. The GMP portion of Codex is the foundation of the house you're building. Considering GMP requirements in a food safety program, your company wants to ensure that you have a strong foundation. This foundation lays the groundwork for a sturdy house or HACCP program that heavily relies on the GMPs, or as we get into risk assessment, GMPs suddenly become prerequisite programs, or PRPs, to mitigate food safety risk. So the list you see here is taken from ISO 22002-1, the PRPs or GMPs required for FSSC 22000 version 6 food safety certification. It's completely based on Codex requirements. As we look at this list, you can see how construction plays a big role in keeping what you don't want in your facility out, how a proper layout reduces the risk of unintentional contamination, and how pest control allows for mitigation of foreign material from insects and rodents. A well-defined rework process lays out how non-conforming materials are segregated, reworked, and managed. This means you're looking at traceability and disposal of materials that do not meet specifications. So with this strong foundation that you've built, you are enhancing your food safety program. Once you've laid the foundation with the programs and procedures for GMP, PRPs, the HACCP plan is like a house that sits on top of this foundation. Your HACCP plan or risk assessment requires identifying a food safety team, identifying product characteristics. If your product is frozen or ambient, storage conditions, packaging, transport requirements, etc. Development of a process flow diagram to accurately identify the risk to materials and processes in your finished product. The hazard analysis is where you identify risk and steps for mitigation. Many of the risks identified can be mitigated by that foundation we just built with your prerequisite programs and you have in place. Things like Your supply chain management can clearly take care of any supplier risks that you may have, or personnel risks can be mitigated by hygiene standards such as hand washing, wearing of jewelry, where people eat meals, and use of facilities for restrooms and hand washing again. Your risk assessment defines where you have your control measures. A control measure is needed for identified risks that are not managed by your GMP or your prerequisite programs. For example, frozen storage of raw materials is required to mitigate the risk of microcontamination. This is considered a critical control point. The mitigation of this risk can be the placement of a chart recorder outside of the freezer where a record of the temperature is tracked 24 hours a day. An employee can monitor the chart recorder to ensure the freezer maintains the correct temperature and documents the monitoring system. Corrective and preventive actions are identified to handle the deviations and management of non-conforming product from the deviation. This entire process must be verified and validated annually when a change occurs in a process as a result of a CCP failure or a recall. Please don't get hung up on verification and validation. Verification is simply reviewing records to show that the food safety plan that you've built is doing what it's intended to do. So is it doing it? Validation is review of the documentation of the food safety plan to show that it can do what it's intended to do. Oftentimes, we use records of verification to support the validation of a food safety plan, so it doesn't have to be complex. Before I jump into how do you get certificated, I just wanted to do a quick review. So GFSI version 20 is the Global Food Safety Initiative. FSSC 22000 version 6, SQF edition 9, and BRC GS Food version 9 are benchmark food safety certifications. They're benchmarked against GFSI version 2020. And lastly, Codex Alimentarius is how the standard that we just mentioned determine what is required of the risk assessments that are built into the standards. It's important to remember that, again, that GMP HACCP is the basis of all GFSI certification. So if you're new to GFSI or having to look at becoming GFSI certification, oftentimes getting a GMP HACCP certification is an excellent first step.
Jennifer, may I interrupt for just one
moment? So what is certification? Certification is having a third-party company review your food safety management system for compliance against stated requirements. There are 3 types of audits that we use in the world of auditing that I live in with SGS. First-party or internal audits are audits of your system. These can be done by your employers or by someone you hire to complete these. This type of audit is unaccredited. Second-party audits or supplier audits are audits performed on your suppliers. These can also be done by your employers, or you can hire someone to do your supplier audits. They are also unaccredited. Third-party audits are performed by an accredited third party, typically a certification body or government organization like CFIA or FDA. Your employees cannot perform these audits. These audits can also be accredited or unaccredited depending on the standard. So the next few slides, I'm going to talk about the certification process. So your company has decided, yes?
Jennifer, can you hear me? Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to call everyone's attention to the chat, to the Q&A. I think it should be on the right-hand side or on the bottom of your screen for all of our attendees. Some of you have popped questions in already. I just want to draw it to your attention and call it out. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A box there, as some of you already have. It should be on the right-hand side, if I'm not mistaken, or it should be on the bottom of your screen. Thanks so much. Sorry, Jennifer, sorry to interrupt.
No worries. It was a good breaking point. Thank you. So you've decided to become certificated. against GMP HACCP or a benchmark standard like FSSC 22000, SQF, or BRCGS food. Before you even get to the first step, your company will need to choose the certification body that you're going to work with. So a company like SGS. Your certification body, or CB as we like to say, will guide you through the process of becoming certificated. They will answer all of your questions. They will provide access to food safety standards that you want to review, and they will help you craft your scope of certification. After you've decided on your CB, next your company will choose the standard. So you know which CB you want to use, you're going to choose your standard next. Typically in North America, Canada, US, we do BRCGS, FSSC 22000, or SQF. The choice of certification standard determines the criteria or the requirements you must meet. While the three I've mentioned here are relatively similar, there are a few differences we'll talk about in a little bit. Finally, after you have your certification body and your standard, there will be an application they ask you to submit. The application requests some fundamental information about your organization, such as what is the scope of your management system? How many locations will there be? How many people are in your facility? What is the size of your facility? How many different risk assessments you have? All of this information is gathered and used to help determine time on site. So we need to, based on requirements set to us by the certification program owners, spend a minimum amount of time on site to completely and adequately review your food safety management system. So now you have figured all that out. The next step is to understand the competence of your people. Most organizations need help with obtaining that necessary knowledge, experience, or competence to implement a food safety management system. Your certification body can provide you a full suite of training courses that help individuals gain the necessary knowledge for implementation and maintenance of your food safety management system. Some common trainings that we see are understanding the requirements of your standard. That's typically 1 to 2 days. HACCP or risk assessment training, internal auditor training so you know how to do the internal audits, root cause analysis and corrective action, and good manufacturing practices. The pathway to certification, it can be as short as 3 months or as long as you can get away with. We say as short as 3 months because once you've made the decision, in order to become certificated, you must provide 3 months of implementation records. So if you're just implementing a pest control program, we want to see 3 months of records that the program is in place and effective. And if it's not effective, what type of corrections you're taking to ensure the effectiveness of the program. Gap assessments are a tool that can be used in a couple of different ways in your march to certification. At the onset of the decision to become certificated, a gap assessment can be used to review your current procedures and processes and identify gaps that in turn can be used to develop a roadmap to certification. The second way a gap assessment can be used is at the end of the preparation phase, just before your initial audit, as a check that you have not missed any details of your chosen standard. Standards have many, many requirements, and it's easy to miss a few things along the way. I like to call this type of gap assessment your get out of jail free card. Gap assessments are always considered outside the scope of certification. They occur prior to certification, and all the findings raised during a gap assessment will not be included in your certification history unless you don't close the gap and it's raised as a finding during certification. While gap assessments are not strictly required, experience has shown that when you do a gap assessment, it helps your organization in the certification process. Experienced auditors will identify any gaps and weaknesses in your food safety management system. These potential issues can then be addressed prior to the actual certification audit without holding up certification unnecessarily long. And the reason I say this is that all of the certifications require that when nonconformities are identified, you have 30 days to fix it. and they need to be fixed with objective evidence. And if you don't do it in the 30 days, the implication is that your certification will not go on and you could not receive your certificate at all. So having that gap assessment helps you identify any gaps that may take a little bit longer to close out before you have your certification. Next is stage 1. Depending on what your company chooses, stage 1 can be the first official step of the certification process. FSSC 22000 is the only food safety certification that we're talking about today that requires stage 1. Stage 1 is included in the initial audit with BRC and SQF. In this phase of the audit or certification, the certification body, they review the design of your food safety management system, covering the documentation required by the standard. We look to understand if there is a sufficient knowledge and understanding of the design of your food safety program in the context of your organization, risk assessment, treatment, including how controls are determined, information security policies, and objectives. At the completion of stage 1 or the review of this documentation, a determination is made on your preparedness for stage 2, which covers the implementation of the procedures and process that we just reviewed in stage 1. So for FSSC 22000, if you don't have all of the procedures and processes in place that are necessary, we may delay stage 2 until you get those in place. Stage 2 is the actual review of the implementation of all the documents we reviewed in stage 1. So this is where we're looking at records, we're interviewing people, we're walking through your facility and looking at the whole process in whole. As I mentioned, for SQF and BRC, this is all integrated in one visit, so it's a one visit audit. For FSSC 22000, year 1 of certification is 2 visits. After year 1, it's all included in a visit. So we'll confirm that the management system is fully fulfilling the requirements of the standard and is operational and functional. So the next phase is that you're certificated. Congratulations on all that hard work. I fully recognize what it takes to become certificated, to maintain it and live it. So once you receive that certificate, don't be shy, be proud, share that success and the news of that certification internally and externally. Promote that achievement in press releases, on social media, and don't hesitate to inform your customers and other business partners that you've made this success and you've done this certification and you're there. Well, I mentioned earlier there were a few key differences, and I talked about this briefly, is that FSSC 22000, it is the certification that requires stage 1 and stage 2 during initial certification. It is also the only one of the 3 certificates that we offer that is a 3-year cycle. So what that really means is that year 1 is stage 1 and stage 2. Year 2 is what we call a surveillance audit. Year 3 is a surveillance audit, and year 4 is recertification. After the first year of certification with stage 1 and stage 2, you will never have to repeat stage 1, stage 2 again. Every audit after that will always be a combined audit of documentation and implementation. BRC and SQF, they don't require that stage 1. It's all done at the same time. But for those 2 standards, every year is considered recertification. Another thing to note in certification is that GFSI has set a requirement that all GFSI benchmark certifications require 1 unannounced audits every 3 years. So to certification bodies, they typically set year 2 of your certification as the unannounced audit. And the reason we do that is because we know that 1 and 3 have to be unannounced. Year 2 is the year to do it, because if for any reason you have to put it off or you can't get it done in year 2, it's done in year 3, and you're meeting the requirement the GFSI has set. Lastly is ongoing improvement. One thing to note is that our experienced auditors will visit your organization on a regular basis, which is at least annually, to ensure that your food safety management system remains effective and, maybe more importantly, is continually improving. During this ongoing improvement and phase, your certification body, they communicate with you on a regular basis on important changes that might happen in the standard. BRCGS, when they make changes, they issue position statements. So one of the things that SGS makes sure is that all of our BRCGS certificated sites are aware of the position statements that BRC is putting out, because during the audit, you have to be compliant to these position statements, and saying you didn't know is not an excuse for not meeting the requirements. We also have ongoing training courses as well as webinars to further help you in your continual improvement journey. So lastly, to start, again, it's essential that you fully understand where you and your company are on your journey, and even more, where you want to go. Do you want to be fully GFSI, or are you just going to start with GMP HACCP? On either pathway, you have to decide and commit to training your teams, developing the programs, gathering the objective evidence, and scheduling your audit. And that's what I have to tell you about certification and some of the background. Sabrina?
There we are. Hopefully everyone can see me. Thank you so much. Before I jump into these questions, I wanted to check in with Jason. Jason, is there anything that you wanted to add or submit to the audience?
No, I think that was great, Jennifer. And I know there's some questions in the Q&A box, but no, that was good. And like I say, a lot of what Jennifer addressed, we get asked that quite often by new processors and those looking for certification. So thank you for that, Jennifer.
Yes, thank you so much, Jennifer. So, oh, sorry, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say the presentation will be made available so that you have it on your website for others to see and review.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so if everyone's okay with it, I'm going to jump into, we've got a couple questions here. I'm going to jump into the first one, which says, what certification is available for importers?
So that's a very good question. And BRCGS has a standard that is specific to agents and brokers that talk about the requirements that are necessary for people who import food. So BRCGS has agents and brokers, and SQF also has an agents and broker standard. So those are the two standards that I would suggest that you look at for importing a food. They both require that you have a risk assessment, but the risk assessment is very different from an importer perspective than it is from a food manufacturer.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I will jump into the second one, if that's okay. It's a little bit long. I'm going to read it all. Okay, so you did touch on this a little bit, so but I think it's fine to just repeat it because I get this so often as someone in sales. But which certification should a food business get first? Most people say it's best to get ISO 9001 first, while others say it's okay to get to go directly for ISO 22000. Is there a particular order, or is it okay to get whichever certification the company wishes?
So I think it's important to understand that ISO 9001 is a quality management system standard, where ISO 22000 is food safety management systems. And to even differentiate that a little bit further, back in the mid 2014, ISO took the decision they were going to create what they call an HLS, or a high level standard. And they decided that from that point forward going on, that every standard would follow the same format. So we have context of the organization, we have leadership, planning, resources, operations, continuous improvement, and I always forget one, so forgive me. But when we look at ISO 9001 and 22000 next to each other, the requirements are completely aligned so that context of the organization is always 4. But when we get to Section 8 in 9001, it focuses on quality-related requirements. When we get to 22000, Section 8 under operations is all about HACCP, Codex, and the risk analysis. So that's the difference between the two. So if your company is being asked to have a food safety management system, then 22000 is the way that you want to go. If they're asking that you have a quality management system, then 9001. The beauty of it is you can do both standards because they're so integratable, because management review is going to be the same clause between 9001 and 22000. The same with continuous improvement and internal audit and customer complaints. They all have the same clause number, so that when you are writing your procedures and your processes, you can say, we're doing all of these things for the quality portion, and we're adding these additional things for the food safety portion, and you don't have to have 2 separate books of requirements. That's kind of long-winded.
No. That answered it perfectly. Thanks. I just wanted to reiterate as well that I am the regional sales manager for Canada, for Northeast Canada, which includes Ontario. So any questions that you have about training or certification that come from this, I'm your gal. So that would be, you would direct them to me if you wanted to get the process moving forward. I would be happy to help with any questions. And I believe a post-webinar email will likely go out with my contact information. I've got a couple more questions, and if it's okay, there I am. Perfect, thank you. I've got a couple more questions. If it's okay, Jennifer, I'll just keep it moving.
Okay.
So this is food safety, but this is a little bit more specific to packaging. So I'm hoping, I'm wondering if you can add anything to this. But Ontario, as you may or may not know, has recently banned single-use plastics. What kinds of impacts do you think this will have on the food safety industry? Is there a certification for food packaging that you think would be well aligned with this?
It's a good question. And as I look out to what we see on the horizon, is I mentioned earlier that FSSC 22000 version 6 had just launched their new standard. They put into their new standard in the FSSC version 6 additional requirements, they put in requirements on waste and how waste is being managed and how that's happening. And they also put in additional requirements on recycling. So how are you managing recycling? One of the key things that most of us don't understand is that we don't recycle enough products in the US and Canada to support our need for PCR. So we're buying it back from China, who's taking it from us. And so we need to understand if the materials we're getting back for recycled is going to cause harm into our food supply chain, especially with packaging. So in the packaging standards, there are requirements about how that's being handled. Whether it be FSSC, BRC, or SQF, they're all looking at that and how they manage recycling and contaminants that may come from recycling and such. I think I diverged from your question.
No, I think you're right. You got it. Okay, so I'll ask one more, if that's okay with everyone. And it's a question I get so frequently. Because Canada, as many people may or may not know, it's filled with small to mid-sized businesses. So it's rare that the companies are really massive and large. So a lot of the work that I'm dealing with, a lot of the clients that I deal with, tend to be on the smaller end. So one of the questions was, my business is very small. It's just me and a few people. Do you recommend hiring somebody dedicated to food safety? Because we may not have the resources for that. So I think the main concern is if they don't have somebody appointed to food safety, do you think is it a requirement? Do you think would they pass even if they don't have that?
Well, all of the standards require that you have somebody who's been trained in risk assessment and understands how to perform risk assessment and determine the ways to mitigate the risks that you identify. So whether somebody in your small organization puts on the risk assessment hat and gets the training and manages it,
Yeah.
you have to have somebody who can lead the program and make it move forward and drive that improvement. So like I said, you either hire somebody or you give somebody another hat to wear.
Yeah. I won't, I mean, yeah, no, never mind.
I also wanted to add that standards also allow you to use external resources to do this work for you.
Yeah.
But at the very end of the day, Sabrina, when you have your audit, you have to own and understand the program that's been built for you.
Yeah. I definitely don't want to say there's a right or a wrong way to do it, but somebody needs to own the program. So how you want that to look, and it's your program, your company, how you want that to look is up to you. But somebody definitely needs to be able, because holes will be poked in it. So you have to be able to respond. You have to be able to know how to answer that. So one question came in just now, and then if it's okay with everyone, we'll go through that, and then we'll take it from there. But I'll read this one last question. And I'll just read it verbatim. As a primary producer, we are being asked for SQF, SAI with Proterra for certain EU markets. We are now advised we may also need ESG in the future. Can there not be one certification that covers all? Which is the question I get all the time as well.
Yeah. That's really what we all want. So, and I think the intent of GFSI when they began back in 2000 was to be able to harmonize and have that in place. But as it's an ever evolving world and things are changing so quickly, it's just been a ball that keeps bouncing in front of us that we haven't captured.
Right. I think it's the pie in the sky. It sounds like for everyone, that's what everyone wants.
I think you also have to keep in mind that food safety auditors may not be ESG experts. And so you'll have to have different type of people to be able to perform the different audits to understand. I like to say that I'm a chemist by training and by degree. I have never audited a meat factory because I don't know the first thing about meat except for I really like to eat a good steak.
Yeah, yeah. And for people that don't know, what is ESG?
It's typically those things along sustainability and governance.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, well, that is the last question that we have. If there are any other questions that anyone has, please feel free to pop them into the chat box. If you would like, and you think of something afterwards, you are welcome to email me. That I'm very happy. My email address should be on the screen there, sabrina.baldini@sgs.com. If you have any questions, not just for our technical team, but how do I get trained? I want to move this forward. How much does this cost? I'm happy to field all of that for you. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, Jennifer, for delivering such a fantastic presentation. And thank you, Jason, for joining us as well from Food and Beverage Ontario. And I'd also like to thank everybody for joining us, all of the attendees for taking time out of your day to join us today. Jason, Jennifer, did you want to add anything before we close?
Well,
just want to say thank you to everyone.
Yep, same here, and thank you, Sabrina, for hosting, and to SGS again. So thank you.
No problem, everyone. Enjoy your Thursday. Happy Thursday if you're in Toronto. Enjoy the weather. Have a good one, everybody, and thank you again for joining. Bye.
So, bye.
Bye.
Bye.